Everybody knows what is going on. We are, of course, a public body, and therefore we're required to have open meetings and access. We have our open meeting. We have access here in the chamber, but a lot of people, of course, rely on open signal for the broadcast because they may not be able to come here now, or they may have accessibility issues. So we like to have these be broadcast live. Today, there's problems with the broadcasting equipment, so they are recording the meeting, and they will rebroadcast it as soon as they have their broadcast equipment fixed, and it will also be broadcast with closed caption. In the meanwhile, I apologize for anybody who's inconvenienced by that, but we will go ahead and continue the meeting under these circumstances. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 348, request of Adam Brunel to address council regarding urban renewal in Lentz.
Is Mr. Brunel here? That leaves Mr. Lightning.
Item 349, request of Lightning Super AI Humanity to address council regarding research project Lightning Super AI Governance.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super AI Humanity. And again, to Elon Musk cutting off my conversation, I'd like you to know I don't appreciate it. I'll move on. One of the things I've tried to do here is basically have a robo-politician put into place of a commissioner. And since Commissioner Fritz has announced her retirement, I'd like to replace Commissioner Fritz with the machine. And one of the things that I've researched a little bit, I'm going to have to change the charter. I believe that our technology is at that level right now. I believe that we are passing the narrow AI to general AI, and we'll go to what the industry calls ASI, but I call it super artificial intelligence, and that's my name that I've created. And what I want to do is begin to basically implement ideas into the machine and have the machine communicate back to us, and then take those ideas across the United States and access that in a reasonable manner and come up with solutions. Now, IBM is already doing that. And I'm going to show you a video today that'll show you exactly the direction they're going. But I'm asking Elon Musk, that is going to be rolling out the robo-taxis, fully autonomous, in the next year, 1,000 out on the streets, and will crush Uber and Lyft into the ground. And I feel so sorry for you because you did that to the taxi industry in Portland. So guess what? Me and my friend Elon are going to crush your businesses into the ground. Oh, sorry. It's all about the shared economy. Anyway, could you play the video, please?
You clearly haven't been watching Star Trek Discovery.
Don't interrupt my speech, and if you want to talk facts.
All right, here we go.
You weren't speaking.
That's interesting. All right, thank you.
Always wins the coolest videos.
And apparently closed captioning is now working on the website if people want to access the website if you need closed closed captioning. Next up will be the consent agenda. Carla, have any items been pulled off of consent?
I've had no requests.
Please call the roll.
Fish,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. Next item up, please, is first time certain item, which is item number 350.
Proclaim April 25th to be Music Millennium Day.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor. Today, we celebrate the independent music record store, Music Millennium. I'd like to acknowledge that Terry Courier, the owner, is in the audience. Terry, would you please raise your hand? Welcome.
Thank you.
Terry and Music Millennium have been instrumental in keeping unique music and LPs alive in Portland. We'll hear more of the store's impressive history and legacy from our panel. Commissioner Udaly co-sponsored this proclamation with me. Commissioner Udaly, would you like to make any opening remarks?
Sure. Hello, everybody. First, a confession. I started my day listening to the music of my youth on Spotify and thinking about the people and places who helped shape my musical taste over the past 35 years. Trust me, the irony did not escape me. As convenient as music streaming services are, no algorithm can ever replace music nerd expertise or the chance discovery of an obscure album flipping through the bins at your local record shop. Music Millennium has been on my record shopping round since I moved to Northwest Portland in 1987. Almost 50 years ago, no. I've discovered music, made friends, and had the amazing experience, many amazing experiences of seeing some of my idols perform in the intimate setting of their, I think, flagship store on Burnside. Is that true? Yes, fantastic. 50 years of serving Portland's music needs and supporting Portland's independent music scene is an amazing accomplishment. Music Millennium is a Portland institution, a heritage business, and one so worthy of our recognition and celebration today. So thanks for everyone who's here. And go buy a record, Portland.
Thank you very much. Mayor and colleagues, I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge Laura Galino de Lovato, who is here. She, of course, is the Executive Director of Northwest Pilot Project. She is the Chair of the Board of the PDX Jazz, and she was really the inspiration for this celebration today. So, Laura, thank you very much. We have a panel of invited guests, which I'd like to invite up right now. Peter Damon of the Waterfront Blues Festival, Janice Mancuso, an entertainment industry specialist, and our dear friend Marcia Hawker, board member of PDX Jazz. If all three of you would please come forward.
Welcome.
Who's first?
I guess I'll
Sir.
go first.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. My name is Peter Damon. I've been a working, touring, recording musician in Portland for 30 years with people like Paul DeLay, Linda Hornbuckle, and more recently, LaRonda Steele. For the last 25 years of that, I've also been artistic director of the Waterfront Blues Festival. I've gotten to know Terry Courier and Music Millennium pretty well through all of that. Despite the enormous changes and upheaval that have happened in the record industry in the last few years, Terry and Music Millennium have not only survived, but they've thrived, and they've become what many of us believe is the best independent record store in the United States. For sure, Music Millennium has been a great record store, but has been so much more than that to our music community. Music Millennium supports us in Portland's music scene in innumerable, incalculable ways. From his work with the Cascade Blues Association, and more recently, Music Portland, to his founding of Oregon Music Hall of Fame, Terry has invested profoundly and selflessly in our scene. When we've needed to pull together a benefit concert or a memorial for one of our friends, Terry has always stepped forward to help. In my work with the Blues Festival, Terry has been an informal, an invaluable informal advisor. I have talked to him pretty much on a weekly basis to find out who's hot and who's not, who's the up-and-coming acts are that I should consider putting on the stage. More than that, Waterfront Blues Festival has survived and thrived for 30 years because of the really vibrant music scene that Music Millennium has helped nourish. And I feel indebted to them for that. Music Millennium is not just a great record store. For 50 years, in so many ways, it has been really the heart and soul of Portland's music scene. Terry and Music Millennium understand that live music is a thread that strengthens and binds the weave of our community. This is a much happier, more joyful city because of Music Millennium. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Janice, welcome.
Hi, I'm Jan Mancuso. I've worked in the music and record business for 50 years, working in distribution, retailing, at a label, on radio and producing records. And I am proud to say that I've known Music Millennium and Terry Currier for at least 30 of those years. In music, Terry Currier is a key figure in Portland and at the national level too. And in the record business, his name is synonymous with Portland. People come from all over the world to shop at Music Millennium. The store staff are as knowledgeable as they are helpful, whether it's identifying a piece of music. I've heard customers sing their requests to clerks, trying to find things, or directing people to the listening posts, which you can audition new music there, or discussing an artist who's coming to town or who just played here. Terry spearheaded the founding of a network of independent record stores nationally to help support artists and recorded music as the chains and other stores closed. And he's worked tirelessly with local artists to promote them through his store and honor them in the Oregon Music Hall of Fame. Music Millennium has sponsored concerts to bring rare and underappreciated artists to Portland for all of us to enjoy, and hosted in-store musical performances to bring musicians even closer to their fans. He even started a record label to help promote local artists. Music Millennium's booth at the Waterfront Blues Festival is a giant supermarket of blues and roots records, hosting meet and greet sessions with the performers at this world-renowned charitable gathering every year. For 50 years on, Music Millennium is one of the finest record stores in this country, one of the few and one of the great, and we're so glad they are here.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I am Marcia Hawker, a member of the PDX Jazz Board of Directors. I serve as Chair of Education and Community Engagement. I also serve as a member on the Program Committee with Terry Currier. I'm delighted to be here to celebrate this wonderful and well-deserved recognition of my friend Terry Currier by the City of Portland. There have already been statements about the many positive contributions to our community by Terry and Music Millennium, so I'll just give you a few of my interactions. In 2001, I began shopping for jazz CDs in Music Millennium when I became a volunteer radio host with KMHD. It was during this time frame that I met Terry Currier, and I met him through Jan Mancuso. Jan always spoke about Terry with superlatives. Music Millennium quickly became my main source of vintage and new releases. And long before anyone was shopping on Amazon, there was Music Millennium. I always find that the staff consistently goes above and beyond to accommodate each and every search. For the past 6 years, I've served with Terry on the PDX Jazz Program Committee that selects the jazz artists from Portland, nationally and internationally who perform at our annual February festival, which is now extended through year-round. Terry's commitment to contribute and his leadership of Music Millennium across the board for over 30 years of its 50 years is invaluable. It is a testimony of his iconic value to the city of Portland and qualifies him as a true Portland treasure. It's a privilege to publicly express my appreciation. Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia, Jan, and Peter. Thanks to Asena Lawrence, who has worked tirelessly to pull this together. Mayor, the next two things on my cheat sheet are if you would honor us by reading the proclamation, and then council comments, and then we'd like to take a photograph.
Very good. So this is a proclamation. It represents the values of all of us here on the dais. Whereas Music Millennium was founded in 1969 by Don and Laureen McLeod and Dan and Patty Lissy on the corner of 32nd and East Burnside, where it still operates today. And whereas Music Millennium is the oldest continuous record store in the Pacific Northwest. And whereas Music Millennium specializes in underground music not commonly found elsewhere in the city. And whereas in 1989, Music Millennium birthed the concept of the in-store performance with 40 straight days of live music in the store, now a common practice in record shops all across the country. And whereas Terry Currier, the current owner of Music Millennium, formed the Coalition of Independent Music Stores in 1995, which paved the way for National Record Store Day. And whereas in 2004, Terry founded the Oregon Music Hall of Fame. And whereas today, Music Millennium is a Portland icon, drawing in people of all ages for vinyl records, CDs, and cassette tapes. And whereas Music Millennium is a national leader in the music selling industry and proudly celebrates 50 years of continuous and weird business here in Portland. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2019 to be Music Millennium Day in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this week.
Could you come to the microphone?
Come on up to the mic and just have a seat, introduce yourself for the record. Good morning.
I would like to thank you, the city commissioners and the city of Portland for giving us this honor of having our own day tomorrow. It's quite an accomplishment for a record store to last this long, but we couldn't have done it without all the great people in Portland supporting us. Music Millennium is more than a record store. It's kind of like a community center. And we have the support of people like this that are up here on the panel, and our customers especially, and the people that have walked through the doors and worked at Music Millennium for the last 50 years to give us this honor to be around here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you all for being here. Thank you for Commissioner Fish and Udaley for putting together this proclamation. My husband spent many happy hours in your store. I think we probably bought half of it at one point or another. So thank you very much for the joy that you bring to a lot of customers.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Thank you, Commissioner Udaley. So we'll take a photo?
Yep.
Very good.
No, we'll come back here.
I'll just, okay.
Go ahead. We don't mind. At least not on Wednesday. Never on Wednesdays.
In the middle here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, Terry. Thank you for all you do.
Hello, Commissioner.
Hi, good to see you, Ms. Darko.
Okay, what's next? I guess I have to figure that out.
Whole generation, I think, that doesn't know what I meant.
All right, next up is item 353 from the regular agenda.
Amend Title 33 to update the neighborhood contact regulations.
Colleagues, today we're continuing the hearing on the Neighborhood Contact Code update. This is a continuation of the hearing from, the hearings actually from March 6th and April 11th. This policy was born from the comprehensive plan process to update the Neighborhood Contact Code by simplifying, clarifying, and expanding reach of notice to residents around new developments. This is the third hearing from for this item, and today we will be considering and voting on the amendments that have been introduced by my colleagues. In front of you, colleagues, are being distributed is the list of amendments. Do we have that? Looks like it's on the way. The list of amendments. For members of the public in the chamber today, there are copies in the front of the chamber, or will be in the front of the chamber next to the council agenda. For those watching and listening today, the amendments are posted online on the auditor's website for the council. Last week, these amendments were proposed and seconded for discussion purposes, and council heard and read verbal and written testimony on each of these amendments. To ensure that we honored the hard work of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and the Bureau of Development Services, as well as the strong public process that's been the precedent for the comprehensive plan and the Neighborhood Contact Code Update project, council took a week to consider the testimony presented on each of these amendments. The written record remained open until today, April 24th at 9:30 a.m., and we allowed substantial time last week to hear verbal testimony in council chambers. Today, the intention is to revisit these amendments and vote on each one of these amendments. After all of the amendments have been considered and the council has voted on the amendments, the ordinance itself will move to the second reading as amended. On May 1st, we'll have a final vote on the ordinance as amended. With that said, we'll now move to vote on each of the proposed amendments. Unless anybody has anything else they want to open with on this, we'll go right to Fritz Amendment Number 1. This was restrict meeting timing on weekdays.
Weekends.
I'm sorry, weekends to between 1 and 6 p.m. Was there any further discussion on this? Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. We talked about this, I think, the last time, right, about what's the preference. I think my concern would be, why would we limit it? Why wouldn't we say sometime between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. so that we actually have flexibility rather than limiting ourselves to the afternoon?
Thank you, Commissioner. The testimony we heard was that there's a lot of conflicts in the mornings on weekends, either religious services on Saturdays and Sundays or activities on Saturdays that families and children do. As we saw, and I think you noted with the public forum we put on for the budget on a Saturday morning, it didn't get nearly as well attended as others. I think as a practical matter, most developers are going to be working business during the week, and so they're probably not going to schedule these on the weekends at all. But that was their it was in response to the testimony that we heard from neighborhood associations and others that mornings on weekends can be filled with other activities.
This is a very small issue, and it would be horrible for us to spend a lot of time on this. But I also want to push back just a little bit and say, I did a Budget 101 forum that had 150 people at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And so I think if we make it inviting for the public to come, the public participates. I just would hate to think that that we would just be so narrow that you have to do it in the afternoon. So that's my only comment, and I'll go with whatever flow ends up moving.
Ditto. This is not a fall on my sword item for me either.
Yeah, right. It's not something I'm gonna like. And then another thing. Thank you.
Very good.
Fresher in the body.
Any further discussion on this item? Carla, please call the roll on Fritz Amendment 1.
Fish,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Okay.
Udaley.
Aye.
Udaley, I'm sorry. Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment's adopted. Fritz, Amendment number 2, this is the requirement that public meetings be accessible. Any further discussion on this item? Carla, please call the roll on Fritz Amendment number 2.
Fish,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaley,
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for this amendment. I vote aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment is adopted. Next item is Fritz Amendment number 3. This is applying a third type of neighborhood contact process for development in the design overlay zones, ELDs, and land divisions with environmental review.
If I may just interrupt,
Commissioner
Mayor.
Fritz.
I took out the expedited land divisions at the hearing last week, so this amendment is not actually what I proposed. So
Very
it's
good.
in the design overlay and land divisions with environmental review. And if I might speak to this
Commissioner
amendment.
Fritz.
Had a conversation with the mayor yesterday about this, why I care so much about this, and this is not quite fall on my sword, Commissioner Hardesty, but it's one that I really care a lot about. As a community organizer in the early 1990s, I was really good at getting subdivisions stopped in environmental zones where they were going to completely mess things up. And then I got appointed to the Planning Commission in 1996 and was part of the subdivision code rewrite. And one of the things that I realized is if the developers meet with the neighborhood first, then they can understand more about what the issues of concern are. And although there is then a subsequent process of the land use review, it goes better for all sides if there's an early meeting before the application is submitted. And so it was part of the subdivision code rewrite. Environmental zones are across the city. Johnson Creek has a lot of environmental zones as well as Tryon Creek and other places. So it's a case of these are special areas. The city has agreed they are special areas. They are Goal 5 designated resources, and so they deserve the extra process of offering the neighborhood the first right to host the meeting and time enough to schedule it at a regular meeting. If the neighborhood doesn't want to, then the developers, and even if they do, the developer still has to post the contact requirements. So we are making things uniform across the city. We're just adding these extra step in the design overlay zone and in land divisions with environmental review. And I would really appreciate your support on this.
So Commissioner Fritz, and I appreciated the conversation we had yesterday. I don't mind disclosing that I was somewhere between opposed and neutral on this amendment prior to our conversation. I think you allayed many of the concerns that I have. But in all fairness, since I know the Bureau of Development Services and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability are leaning no on this, I'd at least like to hear their perspective prior to the vote. And as these are my bureaus, I want to at least give them the opportunity to express whatever concerns they may have. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Wright with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We did consider during the process of developing this proposal adding a sign to the existing neighborhood association offer process. And we decided that the meeting itself really needed to have consistent timing and be advertised to and open to the general public, and retaining the neighborhood association privilege did not accomplish that. combining the proposed process, the sign and the public meeting, and the current neighborhood association process, in the case of the design overlay and the land divisions and environmental review, brings extra time and uncertainty back to the development process at this point. So that's why we don't support it.
So Sarah, let me ask you this, because Commissioner Fritz, I think, has made a compelling argument that in these districts, I mean, first of all, let me acknowledge the equity question which you raised. And my bigger picture question is, someday can we do this throughout the city as opposed to selecting these limited zones? But the neighborhood associations already play a particularly strong role in these areas, and they would likely be asked as per code anyway, would they not?
I'm sorry, they would likely be.
The neighborhood association would be the logical first place per existing code, would it not?
It is, but
The
not under
current
proposed
code would
change.
require the developer to offer to the neighborhood association to have a meeting if they want to have a meeting. Yes, that's the current requirement. That's all that's required
And we
currently.
heard some testimony last week from some in the community who had identified specific projects that they felt because of that interaction, the projects had been strengthened. So they weren't there to block the projects, they were there to shape them to be more consistent with the will of the neighborhood. Would you concur with that?
There are some neighborhood association meetings currently that are very successful, yes.
I caught the hedge too, that was pretty funny. Sarah's good.
She is very diplomatic, yes.
You'll do, thank you. Is there anything else?
I do have a question.
Commissioner Hardesty had a question.
Why would we make the process different for one special community that's not available for other neighborhoods who are having the same kind of growing pains and are facing the same kind of barriers?
The proposal, as it came to you, applies the same requirement across the whole city. So for any project building more than 10,000 square feet, there would be required a sign posting, and that's all, just a sign posting and an email or a letter to the Neighborhood Association, District Coalition, Business Association. And then if the project was building more than 25,000 square feet, there would be required public meeting. The developer is required to make sure that the meeting happens. So regardless of whether or not there's an active neighborhood association in the area, the meeting has to happen. The developer can host that with the neighborhood association if they choose to, and if the neighborhood association wants to, but it's the developer's responsibility to make sure the meeting happens and is advertised on the sign so that everybody knows about it. So that's the proposal as it came to you.
Yes, remember that piece. So my last question is, and so it's not that the meeting can stop the development from happening.
Correct.
It is a notification process. So just because you don't like what's happening and you do the meeting, doesn't mean it stops. Would you say that verbally, please, just so that people hear it?
Yes, the meeting is informational only. Many of the developments are either by right, which means they can be built according to the zoning code, or they are going to enter later a land use review process that will include hearings and opportunities to provide testimony to the city. So it's not, this meeting does not have any decision-making traction.
Thank you.
It's my understanding that part of the amendment that Commissioner Fritz introduced for the design overlay and the environmental overlay is that those are two geographies where there does tend to be that follow-up land use review where there's an opportunity for further public comment, and that was part of the logic of having that be a third type of contact. If I don't want to put words in your mouth, but.
Well, they're more complicated, and you have to address the approval criteria, even in, you're aware of that for the cases that have come to council. So after I had stopped subdivisions for a while, I had the opportunity to either go the PTA tract or something else, or continue in land use. And the reason I kept doing land use is most neighbors get 10 days, 14 days notice, and then a hearing. And they don't know what the rules are, how to interact with them. That's why the neighborhood land use folks, where there is an active neighborhood association, can be really helpful to the developer as well as to other neighbors by saying, no, you can't just say you don't like it and therefore it doesn't, we have to stop it by showing up. You have to address the approval criteria. And by having the meeting ahead of time before they've put in all of their work designing the subdivision or designing the building in a design zone, they get input from the neighborhood. And they become better projects, as opposed to them coming to council, choosing a type 3 so that they can get to council, so that we're put in the position of making a more political decision on, do we like this design or don't we like this design? They tend to get settled earlier.
Makes sense to me.
Any further questions? Anything else? Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. With that, Carla, please call the roll on Fritz 3.
Fish,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment Fritz 3 is passed. And last but not least, Fish number 4, this requires notification of adjacent organizations within 400 feet. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fish,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz,
I vote aye, and I have another comment after you're done, Mayor.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment is passed. Commissioner Fritz.
I need to thank the staff who've done an absolutely amazing job on this project, and I realize that the vote prior to this adds complexity, and I really appreciate you working out the language in the amendment to make it work as well as it could be, and just thank you very much.
With that, colleagues, thank you. The ordinance as amended moves to second reading. Carla, could you please read the next item, item number 354, regular agenda?
Authorize application for and accept 3 traffic enforcement grants for $64,000 and appropriate $45,000 for fiscal year 2018-19 from the Oregon Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Division 2019 grant programs for sworn personnel overtime reimbursement.
Thank you both for being here. Sergeant Engstrom, I believe you're kicking us off. Is that correct?
I sure will.
Thank you, sir.
Sergeant Engstrom with the Portland Police Bureau Traffic Division. I'm one of the sergeants that supervise the patrol aspect of our traffic enforcement and education program there. I also work very often with the Vision Zero program in doing education and enforcement missions throughout the city in some of our high crash areas, and currently serve as a supervisor on our major crash team that gets called out for some of our crashes that unfortunately end in fatalities and or serious life-altering injuries. So we do have a number of grants that we accept from the Oregon Department of Transportation for various things. And we have 3 of those grants that we're working with today before you to see if we can get those approved so that we can move forward with a few other additional services to our community. As you're well aware, we have our Vision Zero program in place with this city, and we're trying very hard to reduce the number of serious injury and fatal crashes that affect all of us on unfortunately, a regular basis throughout our city. And as you've seen in the news, no doubt, this month has been particularly difficult for our city, and our traffic division, our major crash team, has been working very hard on these investigations to help the families of those who are affected. The 3 grants that we would like to accept from Oregon Department of Transportation are one for seatbelt enforcement and education. We've had this grant for upwards of 20 years, and Portland is 3rd in the country for compliance with seatbelts, and it's actually very high in the upper 90s percentile for compliance. However, there are a number of folks that still aren't using their seatbelts as appropriate, and this actually played a role in a recent fatality as well. So that is one of the grants. That one is for $22,000. A speed enforcement grant, which I particularly, I manage that one for the last couple of years. That's designed to put some more emphasis on our high crash network of streets and look for those who are abusing the speed limit, and which greatly contributes to some of our fatalities, which again, a recent fatality had speed as a factor in the outcome of that crash. That grant is for $30,000. And then the 3rd grant is an advanced motor officer training grant. Portland Police Bureau has a motor unit that used to be quite larger. Now we're down to about 18 motorcycle officers and 4 motor sergeants. It used to be almost double that when I became a motor officer a number of years ago. So we are limited in our resources, and these grants allow us to be able to go out and devote extra time and resources to a problem that we have in this city with officers on their off-duty time. They can come in and work under the Department of Transportation for the state. They will reimburse the overtime to get more attention out there on the streets. Now, officers are not forced to do this. They are entitled to their time off, as anyone is, but they can choose their times to come in and work at their convenience and the convenience of their family. They're also not forced to issue citations. We want them to work, we want them to work hard, but whether they issue a citation, a warning, give an opportunity to go to a class, whatever they deem appropriate in that particular situation is allowed. We encourage them to work hard and continue working throughout the time that they're on that deployment, but the outcome of the traffic encounter is up to them. A little bit more on that last grant for the training opportunity. Our training staff in the traffic division is known throughout the West Coast for having a very, very rigorous program. We're very well trained. We work really hard to do that, and we'd like to impart some of that expertise to other agencies here on the West Coast. And this is a one-time grant for $12,000 to host a motorcycle training seminar at the Oregon Department of Public Safety Standards and Training facility down in Salem. So those funds will go to help prepare for and implement that training program. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them on any of these fronts or in traffic in general.
Sergeant Engstrom, something you said that's almost secondary to the grant, but which certainly caught my attention. Did you say that the traffic division was twice as large?
Yeah, when I came to the
joined?
traffic division in, I believe, 2009 as an officer, I believe we had about 35 people on motorcycles. And we had about 8 to 10 officers in cars. Currently, we have 18 officers in motorcycles, 2 in cars, and we used to have 5 sergeants, and we now have 4. So the traffic division has been greatly impacted. Our traffic investigative unit consists of a sergeant and 4 investigators, and we go on call for 2 weeks at a time for the major crash team. And we always have a lead investigator and a number of officers and a sergeant. And then we have a backup investigator. And we don't have to use that too often, the backup. But recently we have, where that initial investigator gets tapped out with such a big caseload that we've had to pull in the backup. And then that backup received 3 page outs in less than 24 hours. And we had to go back to the original investigator. So we are taxed quite a bit in the traffic division, and we need all the resources and help we can get to make a bigger impact and help this city achieve its goals of Vision Zero. Too many people and their lives and their families are being affected by traffic violence on our roadways.
Thanks, Sergeant Engstrom.
Yes, sir.
Captain Lorico, did you have anything to add?
No, except for that in 2014, we had 33 motorcycles, more specifically, and that's a little more current information.
So more than double. Thank you. Questions, Commissioner
Thank
Daly?
you. First of all, I want to thank you for your service to the city and just acknowledge that the work that you do is stressful, it's dangerous, and it is also traumatic, especially this month. I am personally disappointed and frustrated by the behavior we're seeing on the streets, both as a citizen and the traffic commissioner. And this month, I think with 8 deaths?
Yes.
7 or 8?
8.
Has been particularly heartbreaking.
I'm sorry, 9.
Oh, okay.
9. We had 9 in about 13 days.
Jeez.
Yeah. As you know, I support the traffic division. I want to see increased enforcement. I, of course, support application for these grants. I want to know if this is going to supplement your budget or backfill a gap. Are we going to get something extra?
This is a supplement.
It is a supplement.
ma'am.
I'm very glad to hear that. I'm surprised that there's no grant for distracted driving enforcement.
We already have that in place.
We do. Okay, fantastic.
So some of those other grants are, we have a DUI enforcement grant, we have a distracted driving grant, and what am I missing?
Speed grant.
Well, these ones that I've mentioned
Yeah.
today.
May I add, I should say, the seatbelt grant, the way that's enforced is very similar to the distracted driving grant. And there's no restriction on the officers who are working a seatbelt grant, who sees someone go by with their cell phone up to their ear in stopping that car. So
And
we are able to use, to do that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't drive a lot, but when I do drive and I see someone weaving, chances are they're on their phone. When someone almost hits me in a crosswalk, taking a turn, chances are they're on their phone. One of the accidents you mentioned, a passenger was ejected from the back seat through the windshield and died. He was not wearing a seatbelt. It was a TNC. Do we have a law that requires people to use seatbelts when they're riding in cabs or TNCs?
I've had that question a couple times this week. The Oregon law requires everyone who is in any passenger vehicle, less than 15 people in it, to use a seatbelt. The only exception would be, there's a few exceptions, but a taxi cab driver, but their passengers are required to wear seatbelts. And I think that is a safety thing on a different level with regards to robberies and things like that and stuff like that. I don't know all the reasons for it, but that is one of the exceptions. There's a couple other small ones, but when it comes to, Uber and Lyft and those other agencies, you are required to wear your seatbelts. If you are 16 or older, it's the responsibility of the passenger. If they're under 16, it's the responsibility of the driver. So in that particular case, had that vehicle been stopped, the driver would not receive the citation. It would be the passenger not wearing their seatbelt.
So I'm going to admit that I did not know that, and that I don't always buckle up when I'm riding in a cab. I buckle up if the driver's making me feel uncomfortable. So I think a little public education is in order on that, and maybe some signs or stickers in the back seats. I'll just follow up on that. But I had to take this opportunity to daylight that issue, because I think most people don't bother buckling up. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you so much for coming to brief me on these grant opportunities. I want to go back to something you said, Officer, about the people that are on the street. How many officers are in the Traffic Enforcement Division again?
In the division, again, we have our patrol side of the division and our investigative side of the division.
So the total number?
The total number?
24.
24.
So you have a
Plus some
total-
sergeants.
24 plus some sergeants.
Yeah, so we have 18.
5 sergeants.
24 plus 5?
5, yes.
29.
Yeah.
So there are
24, yep.
29 people totally in the division at the current time.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And how many are actually out doing traffic enforcement?
On a day-to-day basis, I have the traffic division on day shift, me and one other sergeant, and we each have currently 4 officers working for each of us. So we have 2 sergeants and 8 officers. However, each of our officers are required to work 1 day out of their 4 for East Precinct as backfill in a precinct district.
So
And
I'm
so
just
that
talking.
takes them off the
I'm just
street.
talking traffic right now.
20.
I know the whole story about.
total number's 20.
120 officers down. I know all that. I'm just really trying to narrow down into who's on the street providing support for traffic, right? So I don't want to get into the big thing about how many officers.
What I'm getting at is any given day, in day shift for the entire city of Portland, I have myself and 2 to 3 officers.
Okay. And I asked that because I heard you say that officers have the option of coming in when they want to work overtime to do this enhanced enforcement, and that they can basically do it the way they want. I guess my question and my concern are they targeting specific communities? Are you collecting data on the demographics of who's being stopped, who's being impacted by this enhanced activity? And if so, what can you tell me about that?
Sure. We ask our officers when they're working any enforcement, whether straight time or overtime, to try and focus on those high crash corridor areas or areas where we're having a high number of violations or a number of crashes, things like that. And our data shows that they're doing a very good job of working and conducting those traffic stops in those type of areas when it comes to the traffic division.
But the areas with the highest crashes are very low-income communities where the city has failed to invest in good roads and good lighting and good infrastructure. So again, I'm really just trying to get a sense for if you're focused in neighborhoods who the city has lacked investing resources in, who are the people demographically that are being stopped and impacted by this enhanced activity?
Sure, we absolutely capture all that data. Each time an officer does a traffic stop, they're required to fill out a little mask online, and all that data is captured as to the demographics of the person they stopped, what the outcome was. So when it comes to this overtime for the speed grant specifically, they're supposed to be on high crash corridors. Now those, yes, go through some areas of the city that are underprivileged or don't have as much infrastructure built up. However, some of those streets, like Burnside, for example, goes all the way from the West Hills all the way to the east side. Burnside's a high crash corridor. They can work Burnside way out there, or they can work Burnside down here. Same thing with a number of these other streets like Powell and Division and MLK and Lombard, all over the city. BHH is one of our high crash corridors in Southwest. So we try and spread it out.
Is that data available?
I'm sorry?
The data, the demographic data that you're collecting, is that data publicly available now?
Publicly, it's the stops data collection is what we have, and our strategic services division takes care of all of that. And they have, I don't know what's publicly available.
Yes, ma'am. I
is publicly
actually
available.
have a PowerPoint presentation on that data that I can leave with you that overlays the demographic crash data standard with our stop standard. The methodology for officers working overtime is no different than the methodology of officers working straight time. My expectation of those officers is that they are taking into account the neighborhoods that they're working in and that they are acting appropriately to make sure that we're not criminalizing driving behavior. And that doesn't matter whether they're working straight time, doesn't matter whether they're working overtime. When the sergeant talks about people have a lot of freedom to decide whether they work it or not, that doesn't mean they have. This is not a managed or unsupervised grant. The sergeants supervise the grants. They put signups on the board where the criteria for that job is spelled out. And that includes the time frame. You don't get just to do it during the time frame that you want either. And to add to that, we adjust a lot of our focus on the high crash corridors based on our ongoing meetings with our partners at PBOT and ODOT, and certainly to address concerns for fatalities, particularly pedestrian fatalities, is they're 50% of what we're experiencing right now, and that's heartbreaking. And so that may mean that although a high crash corridor is on the west side of Burnside, that because we've been experiencing a spike in fatalities or injury crashes in another area, we will go there for a period of time and monitor the effect of that. And particularly when it comes to pedestrians, focus on warnings, handing out pamphlets and brochures, bringing along our partners such as Oregon Impact that have come out with us recently on a new project that we've been doing to just simply be out there to contact people and talk to them about their behavior or their safety, and then give them information that will help them keep safe in the future.
Thank you so much for that. I would love to know whether or not that data, we used to get those reports annually, and I haven't seen them for about 5 or 6 years. So I would love to know if the data is being collected, how we get access to, the public gets access to that data. Thank you
Yes,
so
ma'am.
much. Appreciate it.
It's actually become state law recently that we collect it, so it's continued.
State law is collecting it, but it doesn't say giving it to us.
Oh, sure.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Since some of this intersects with my bureau and our historic shortcomings, I just want to point out that more than half of deadly crashes occur on just 8% of Portland's streets, and we call these streets our high crash network. And the parts of the high crash network that are in low-income communities and communities of color are being prioritized by PBOT for our Vision Zero improvements. But I also need to point out that many of them are actually owned by ODOT, and we have no jurisdiction over them or ability to improve them. And ODOT and the City of Portland have very different standards and priorities as far as moving people and cars through our streets.
Very good. Commissioner Fritz.
First, thank you, Captain Lorenko and Sergeant Engstrom, for all the work you've been giving me. Colleagues, I've been looking into this in relation to this grant, but also in relation to the cannabis tax, the recreational cannabis tax, some of which is allocated to Vision Zero and to the traffic division. And I think that's a conversation we need to have, as there will be more cannabis tax available this year, as to where the appropriate place to allocate that is. On these particular grants, and again, thank you for your work in going the extra mile, as Commissioner Udaley alluded to. In your grant application, you state that communities of color, women, and people with disabilities will not be uniquely impacted. Will the grant reporting include the demographic information that Commissioner Hardesty alluded to?
The grant reporting at the end of the cycle?
Yes.
We have a number of different grants, and I only manage the speed grant and a work zone grant. So I can only speak to the ones that I particularly know. And in my grant application, there's a number of questions. I think there's 6 different bullets or something that we have to address, and I cannot specifically remember if that particular question was on there.
Okay, so could I ask then that when you do your grant reporting, you add the question and give the council the data for the City of Portland?
Sure.
Since you'll have collected it.
Yes.
Thank you.
We
That's
can include that.
really helpful, thank you. And then you plan to notify communities about the planned participation in the blitz periods. How will you get that information out? Will it be in languages other than English?
Again, the blitz periods are usually with the seatbelt grant, and I think we have some with our pedestrian safety grant and our DUI enforcement grant. It doesn't have it for the speed grant. But when they put out information, it usually goes through our PIO's office, Public Information Officer's office, and we can get that on social media and things like that. Now, if that comes in other languages, I'm not aware.
We can make that request.
Thank you. And then something else just occurred to me. With the decrease in the amount of traffic officers and police in general, do we have vehicles that are sitting in the garage during a shift? No?
No, ma'am. Those fleet services have done inventories and recovered any cars that they are aware of that are not being utilized, and particularly because of the way our vehicles are fueled, and the car basically logs into the fuel system and talks to fleet services. They know whether or not we are using a car or not, and if we don't use the car, then we get asked about why not and can we give it up.
Well, I'm wondering, maybe we could put some of them to good use and keep them for when we get staffing back, just have them parked at the side of the road, because really we're wanting to deter people from doing the bad behavior in the first place, as Commissioner Udaley said. So I have certainly found that traffic tends to slow down when there's a police vehicle.
Ghost car programs are popular in many jurisdictions, and among the initiatives that I've been trying to propose, besides enforcement and uniformed personnel to kind of help out with the lack of staffing, that's certainly one of them.
Great, thank you.
Very good. I want to thank you both, and Sergeant Engstrom, I want to thank you and Sergeant Barnum for spending some time with me of late to give me more insight into what's going on in the traffic division. And I want to thank you both for the hard work that you're doing. And I really appreciate the fact that you're connecting this back to our Vision Zero goals. We highly respect the work you're doing. And I want you to know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public testimony, Carla. How many people do we have signed up?
We have one person signed up.
Very good. If you guys want to cool your heels for a few
Yes.
minutes, we'll
And
take public
I'd just like to
testimony.
say thank you to everyone for the meetings and the hosting us and in your support.
Thanks, Captain. Appreciate it.
I said we have one person, that's you. It's Maggie.
3 minutes, name for the record. On
I'm
subject,
Maggie.
please.
I'm Maggie, and please turn up your volume at home because I have a soft voice. Okay, I am happy to tell you that I love, love, love everything about this, and I'm going to tell you why right now. This is about electric bikes and biking, and you can get these materials on 820 Southwest 2nd Avenue from Thomas, Kuhn, Newton, and Frost. This is about electric bikes. This is about biking laws. This is about rules of the road. You talked about kids in the school zone. Okay, now I've got 5 quick points to make. First one, reducing the speed limit in neighborhoods to roadways attached to neighborhoods is a great idea, to 20 miles an hour. This reduces the carbon output and makes for a cleaner planet. Number two, in France, 14-year-olds are now allowed to drive the equivalent of a neighborhood electric vehicle. That's great. Number three, to Hardesty, for the price of a single mile of 4-lane transportation infrastructure, hundreds of miles of pedestrian and bicycle and electric vehicle infrastructure can be built enough to support a mid-sized city. You were talking about investment of infrastructure and how much it costs. And it's good for the economy because when people get out of their cars, they're reducing the carbon impact and they're going into mom and pop shops and they're shopping. So this is good for the local economy. You're reducing the amount of money you have to spend on infrastructure. You're getting people to slow down to reduce their carbon output. Vision Zero is wonderful. Here's what I would authorize more money to be spent on if the police would stop people in these areas where they've failed to, the city has failed to provide infrastructure and lighting and all that. And instead of giving them a ticket, say, did you know that if you slow down, you will reduce the carbon you're releasing in the atmosphere? And here's a sticker for you that says, driving slower for a cleaner planet. Have a nice day. And leave it at that. We're all about recognizing that it's climate change, right? And you can slow down and reduce your impact on the planet, cleaner planet. This is for your grandchildren. This is for your children's grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And with that, this is an emergency ordinance. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fish.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you to the Oregon Department of Transportation and the Portland Police Bureau for working on these grants. Crashes are devastating. Aye.
Wheeler.
These are great grants that are being brought forth today, and I appreciate the Police Bureau bringing this forward. It'll improve safety around seatbelt usage, and as Sergeant Engstrom mentioned, that has even led to a fatality as recently as a few days ago. Child passenger safety requirements, speed violations, and community outreach, as well as motorcycle training. All of these are highly valuable. The seatbelt grant has already saved lives and has avoided personal injury, and we've seen that because of this grant, the past seatbelt usage in our community has gone up, and as was mentioned through testimony, it remains very high to this day. And of course, Vision Zero is on all of our minds. These grants will enable us to continue our efforts around Vision Zero. So I thank you both for your presentation. Maggie, thanks for your testimony. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Next item, Carla, is item number 355 off the regular agenda.
Amend an intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County to extend the Sex Buyers Accountability and Diversion Program through December 31, 2021.
All right, and we have LifeWorks Service Director Amy Shea Reyes and Commander Jeff Bell. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for allowing us to speak before you today. First of all, I want to apologize. I think you're, or at least many of you are aware of Officer Mike Gallagher and the excellent work that he does in this regard. He's unable to be here today because, as is very typical of him, he's working, he's actually in Medford right now, helping train officers in Southern Oregon about identifying and dealing with human trafficking. So I'm a poor substitute, but I appreciate you hearing us anyway. Basically, this ordinance continues a intergovernmental agreement with the City of Portland, LifeWorks Northwest, and the Multnomah County DA's office, and it extends the program for 24 months. This is the Sex Buyers Accountability and Diversion Program, sometimes known as John School, colloquially. This program helps to reduce the demand for commercial sex and human sex trafficking through education of the people who are actually arrested for purchasing these services. The program aims to greatly reduce criminal justice costs and public health costs through increased awareness. And the primary education piece of this program focuses on helping the people realize the human cost of their decisions to solicit prostitution. These folks are only eligible on their first arrest, and they're given a choice to pay a fee to attend the class or go through with the criminal process. Past experience has shown that this program has a very low recidivism rate, and the comments from folks that go through the program tend to be very positive and tend to show a great appreciation for the information that they've learned. The class is a day long. It's a 7-hour class, and it addresses health consequences of sex trafficking. They have either a video presentation by a survivor of sex trafficking, or I think they occasionally have actual folks, survivors, come in and talk to them. They get a presentation by the Multnomah County DA's office. Typically, Officer Gallagher does a presentation on the criminal aspects of this, and they have a panel discussion. And again, the feedback from folks is a lot of appreciation for being made aware of the impact that their decisions have on these human beings that are essentially trafficked for sex. And so this has proven to be an effective tool in combating human trafficking in the city by reducing the demand for those services.
Very good. Is there anything else in the presentation? Any questions before we go to public testimony? Commissioner Hardesty.
Quick question. Has this program ever been evaluated? I see we keep extending the contract, but we haven't actually gone back out, got a new contract. Has there been any evaluation?
Not that I know of. We do, we present quarterly reports and we collect data from those reports, but it hasn't had a formal evaluation that I know of.
Are we anticipating going out with a new RFP, or are we just going to keep extending this one indefinitely?
My understanding was, and I might be getting this one mixed up with the other ordinance, that we are going out with an RFP after this latest extension.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public testimony?
Yes, we have one person signed up. Maggie?
All right, come on up. Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it. And you did very well, by the way. You were not a poor substitute. You were excellent.
Thank you.
And thank you both for your work. It's really important.
Yeah, go ahead and sit there now.
This is an issue that is fraught with controversy because I want to delineate between somebody going to a massage parlor or a place like the Birdcage where both parties are participating consensually in public to something with other people around, from sexual trafficking where there are these are victims of crime. Okay, so what I'm going to say next is a couple of days ago, I was out at Waterfront Park because it was nice. It was like, the low was going to be like 51 that night. And so I was eating, when it was sunset, and this guy came up and started talking to me, and we just started talking about politics and, all that. And then it turns around, he was fishing for a quote-unquote date. And, I was in my gray T-shirt, and I looked very khaki. He must have been pretty desperate. But anyway, he wanted me to go off to his apartment. And it's like, are you nuts? Are you absolutely crazy nuts? I've never seen you before from Adam. Like, I'm not going to go off with you anywhere. But he found somebody the next night. And I watched them walk along the waterway, and I went up and, talked to the woman, and I said, that song from the Dixie Chicks called Earl? And then I started singing Don't Go Home with Strangers. And I hope she got my message, because, you don't want to tell women what to do. You just want to give them the information and let them make a decision. But I think educating women that there are dangers out there, and also showing young women and children how not to get sucked in. And again, I want to delineate this from the very adult stuff that goes on in the birdcage-like venues that exist, or consensual massage parlors where it's like everybody's way over age and consenting adult. Okay, that's it. Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Diana, and this is a really controversial topic, and it's a very serious topic. I am grateful for the education programs that are out there, and even more grateful for people who have been arrested but given the opportunity to participate in these education classes. My only comment and encouragement would be to make this education for everyone, men and women, youth, and people of all ages, because there are people out there who are, sex workers, that is their employment. That is how they make their money. People may not agree with that method, but it's what they're choosing to do. And so having this education for everyone, instead of just limiting this education to people who are currently violating our Oregon state laws, I think it should be transparent for everyone and put out there in a way that can be friendly and inviting. In the earlier testimony, when Maggie was talking about the traffic violations and officers having the right to, handle that how they would like, I kind of believe that it should be the same transparency for this, because this is a high-risk field. This is a high-risk topic. People get hurt. People who are aware choose to still go into this program. And lack of education doesn't help anyone. And so I'm grateful for what we are currently setting up. I think it's very important, and I'm very happy to see this, and I think that we can also make it better. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
I left
Thank
my
you, Maggie.
sex trafficking ribbon and Vision Zero button at home. I'm sorry I did.
It's never too late. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate it. Very good. So any further discussion on this? This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Colleagues, with your forbearance, I'd like to switch up the schedule and go to 357 and 358, and then I have to go. But I want to be here for these two items. So if we could move to item number 357, please.
Authorize the mayor to sign the updated stadium Good Neighbor Agreement for Providence Park.
Very good. So colleagues, this is a second reading. Last week, this ordinance had its first reading. It received public testimony. We have open amendments that were put on the table from OMF Peregrine. They were moved, they were seconded during the first hearing last week. So we'll take up the votes in order. Because we are then taking up the votes on this, we can procedurally not move the ordinance today, so we'll move it to second reading with any or all of the attached amendments. So that's the order of things. So the first item is amendment number 1. This was to have police officers within the stadium in addition to providing private security officers. Any further discussion on this item?
Mayor, why has the conditional to the extent possible been removed?
Is there somebody from staff here who can explain that? Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Carl Lyle, Spectator Venues Program Manager of the OMF. So the rest of the text in that amendment is in the existing agreement that's dated from 2000. So the suggestion at one point was to add the to the extent possible because we were simply aware of the challenges of finding adequate police to participate in the off-duty program that's utilized for that. So it was just a recognition, and the neighborhoods responded that they did not like that and wanted to make sure that it was required and that we stuck with the original agreement language.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you. No, I have a question for you.
Okay, now that I'm here.
And I did review a video from last week. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here. So if this requirement for Portland police officers to be there, why can we not have a requirement for them to also pay for paid parking enforcement?
That's a great question. And this is the wrong city attorney to answer it. But I would say we do have Ken Puckett from Peregrine if you want to talk to Timbers directly about that.
That's a good idea. And I know we did have some email correspondence that the city attorney opined that would have to be in the operating agreement.
I think it's a gray area. You know, I think if you want to move forward with that conversation, we can do it. I think that what's obviously going to happen after that is a more in-depth discussion between PBOT, Timbers, probably OMF, to sort of figure out what kind of solutions there are to make sure that the parking enforcement is increased.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to be able to solve that issue right here
No,
today.
Peregrine, is that something that you'd be willing to do?
Absolutely. I think there's some, my name's Ken Puckett with Portland Timbers. There's some confusion last week. We pay PDOT right now almost $68,000 for parking permits to close streets around the park. So we're paying PDOT, and we still struggle to get enforcement on those permits that we buy. So we would love to sit down with them and say, well, where's that money going? Because right now it's just in the form of plastic bags that my staff hangs over parking signs. We struggle on Sundays to get somebody up to verify those. So we're paying for a service already that we're not getting. So would love to have that conversation. How can we make that cleaner? If we need to help with that, we're more than willing to pay for that. I mean, where would the revenue go from the tickets that the enforcement people that we are paying for goes? Is that something that we would pay just the net on? I mean, there's a lot of different discussions to have here.
Okay, but you're willing to have that discussion?
We're willing to have that, absolutely.
That would be
But I
great.
just want everybody to know, because I think it was missed last week, that we do pay for parking permits every game, almost $3,500 a game, to close streets down and follow the traffic plan that PDOT has given us. We follow all the procedures. The bags have to be up, no less than 24 hours to be verified to tow. They have to come verify them, and then they have to come tag the car to be towed. So there's this whole process that we're already paying for that I think was lost in PDOT's testimony last week. From, I think the gentleman's name was Mike.
I can answer one of your questions. Where that money's going is to replace the revenue we're losing on the parking spots that you're
None of
taking
them,
up.
they're all 2-hour parking. There's no
But you
metered
just
parking.
said you're closing streets.
We are.
And bagging off the parking meters.
We're not begging meters. They're the A-zone parking. There's no revenue made there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There
All
are
right.
no parking signs, kind of like what you have over in Northwest, you know, the Stadium L, Stadium Z, Stadium.
Unless you have
We're in
a
Zone A.
neighborhood pass.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's clear to me still why you would have to pay for that accommodation.
We don't have a problem paying for
Yeah,
that
I'm,
accommodation.
I'm open to this discussion, but I'm not prepared to make an amendment. to
No,
that.
no, I
Yeah.
just wanted to check with
Yeah.
the Transportation
But
Commissioner.
I think
that
all
that
Paragon
seemed
wants
to
is
be a-
is a fair, equitable, to solve this problem. That's all we're looking for, not something
I-
free.
It just
or
seemed to
anything.
be a missing piece of the puzzle as I was watching the video, kind of not being in the moment. So thank you for being willing
Sure.
to have that discussion between all of you.
Good conversation.
Thank
to have.
you.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Fish,
Aye?
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right. Amendment 1 has been adopted. Amendment number 2, this is regarding the meetings of the Oversight Committee being in conformance with state public meetings law. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mayor.
Commissioner Fish.
So the commitment that I would like to have here, and we got a report last week on boards and commissions, and we have a much more sophisticated template that we now use to evaluate whether we're in compliance with the law, how we structure boards and commissions, what expectations are, you know, when emails or public records and the like. This on its face looks like a sensible first step, but I don't want it to preclude a deeper dive by Civic Life, Commissioner Udaly, so that we can see that, is this in fact operating in accordance with our expectations? So I view this as a bridge and would hope that we can come back and evaluate whether it is sufficient.
Sounds good.
Good, thank you.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Fish,
Aye?
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Amendment 2 is adopted. Amendment number 3 is with regarding to neighborhood noticing. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fish,
Aye?
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment 3 is adopted. Amendment number 4 with regard to hiring of an independent consulting firm. Any further discussion?
Yes, I just have a
Commissioner Fritz.
suggestion. It says prepare a report. Could we add to be presented to the council? Because I think it's important that it comes back here. It's a friendly amendment.
We can. The one caution I would have on that is I'm not sure we want to make that an annual obligation that it actually come to council. So, I mean, I think the way that this agreement has worked in the past successfully is, you know, once things get kind of up and running and they're going along,
Yeah.
council doesn't need to be in that loop on a regular basis. I do think that makes a lot of sense for after the 2019
So that's
season.
the first sentence, and so I was proposing to add to be presented to council at the end of the first sentence, which is for the 2019 season. There's then another sentence about each subsequent season.
I think that makes sense. Jen.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I include that as a friendly amendment so we can move this?
Just make a motion?
I'd rather not make a motion. What I'd rather
Friendly
do is
amendment.
have it be part of the record.
Mayor, it's a friendly amendment because it simply
you can just
clarifies.
I believe it is clarifying,
the
and therefore she
presiding
has made a
officer.
statement on the record which staff has adhered to.
Yeah, so that covers it.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Fish,
Aye?
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Amendment 4 has been approved, so we will move this.
Could I just make
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank
yes,
you. I know you
bet.
have to go, but I wanted to just put some comments on the record. Something to consider is where the transportation network companies and the taxis drop people off. It seems like if we're expecting other people who drive to be walking from the smart park, that it shouldn't be more convenient to drive right to the stadium where it's going to be more congested. So I know you're looking at that. Maggie, I wanted to say I'm really happy to know that you're a dedicated sports fan, and we certainly share that in common. I'm wearing my green Timbers and red feather thorns today, just to show support. Mayor, I want to thank you for bringing up the 107ists, and I know we've got a member here today, and this is a partnership with the community, and it's unique. And then my last comment is that the documents look at where TriMet service close to the stadium is going to be increased. The problem for me as somebody who lives in Southwest is that I can't get I can get to the transit more, but then there's no more greater frequency of buses that go back to my neighborhood, which makes it really difficult to take transit. So as you're continuing to work on this, that might be something to look at as to, in terms of where ticket holders live, to see if there's a potential for enhanced communications. I would also, is the voucher for the parking, is that a new thing this year?
No, that's been in place for, I think, a few seasons now.
Well, okay, I've been a Thorn season ticket holder since the beginning. I've never heard of it, and I agree with Commissioner Hardisty's comment that it shouldn't only be season ticket holders. You know, when you go to the Ducks games, you get a ticket, and it's got a coupon on the back, whether you're a season ticket or not.
Right.
So just something else to consider, but thank you very much for letting me put my comments in after the actual hearing.
Very good, excellent. So this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading next week as amended. Thank you. And the next item before I have to go here, item 358, this is a second reading.
Approve the updated Providence Park Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fish?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted, and then I think you'll want to move back to item 356. Commissioner Udaly will preside.
And Mayor, thank you for representing the city at Deputy DeRosa's funeral. I appreciate
you.
that.
Could you hand me the gavel? Sorry. She usually does that. That's all right. Okay. Carla, please read the next item.
Item 356, amend a grant agreement with LifeWorks Northwest in an amount not to exceed $210,000 and extend funding through June 30, 2020 for the New Options for Women program.
We have Bureau staff here to give a presentation.
Thank you for your patience, letting us do soccer before that.
No problem. So again, Jeff Bell, I'm the commander of the Detective Division for the Portland Police Bureau. I apologize, some of this is going to be a little redundant. And again, I want to start off by recognizing the excellent work that Officer Mike Gallagher and his partner, Officer Ariana Ridgely, have done over the years in this arena. So this ordinance amends a grant agreement and extends that funding through June 30th, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It's been a pleasure over the years to have the Bureau have, the Police Bureau have this working relationship with LifeWorks Northwest. This is not necessarily common throughout the country, and we think it's helped our mission greatly. This funding allows our human trafficking unit to be more efficient and continue their work of identifying victims of human trafficking and the prosecution of people soliciting prostitution. We currently work with the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office and the courts when victims of sex trafficking are identified, which allows not only for court-ordered placements in these programs through LifeWorks Northwest, but allows us to refer victims of human trafficking to LifeWorks Northwest. Again, this contract supports New Options for Women. I'll let Ms. Reyes talk more about that. But essentially, it's trauma-informed care to women who have been trafficked, essentially to help them exit that forced presence in the sex industry. This is primarily done through professional counseling services and a network of outside service providers. And again, this amends the term of the grant through June 30th of 2020.
Hi, I'm Amy Shea Reyes with LifeWorks Northwest. Thank you for having me. LifeWorks Northwest is a nonprofit social service agency providing prevention, mental health, and addiction services across the lifespan. Last year, we served 26,000 people in Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County. The NOW program falls within our young adult and adult specialty services, and we're helping women exit the sex industry. We provide mental health, addictions, mentoring, and case management to these women, and your support allows us to do that in a trauma-informed and really specialized manner where we're able to take our time, meet women where they're at, really work on engagement and outreach. We're able to meet their basic needs first because sometimes they're coming in and they can't even deal with an assessment. They need us to help them with housing or to go to the doctor or many, many other things. One of the benefits of now being part of LifeWorks Northwest is our continuum of services, and many of these women also have children. We have a fit case manager on site, so we're able to help women whose children are in DHS custody or working with DHS navigate that system. We're also able to help women get into our Project Network, which is a residential addictions program for women and children, if they are at a high level of substance use need. We have outpatient counseling for children as well, and on occasion, we're also able to connect some of these children with our children's relief nurseries, which we have in each county. We're able to provide a holistic approach, not just to the women, but their family, which long-term is a really good investment. We have what we call Community Court. This is a diversion program for women who are having their first charge. We have historically held a class every other month for 4 hours. It's been just our LifeWorks staff kind of giving some education around the law, around healthy relationships. We have recently decided that we want to change that to make it a 2-week process because we noticed that women would come, do their time, and leave, and we never saw them again. We felt like that was a missed opportunity to provide outreach. So we are now having women come for 2 weeks. They have an assessment. They have 2 choices for groups. They could attend either one. We ask that they come to 4 groups and 2 individual sessions. That could be substance use or mental health, whatever the need is for them. And we're hoping that this will help our engagement and help bring more women into our services. Our staff are amazing. They are so non-judgmental. They care so much about these women and just want to help everyone. Our relationship with the Portland Police Bureau is the most special thing I think I've experienced. My first sex trafficking unit meeting, I was floored at the compassion that the officers showed towards these women. And I just greatly appreciate that women are not being looked at as committing a crime, but being victims of a system. We really appreciate your support. We really appreciate the opportunity to be reaching out and helping as many people as we can.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Well, I'd just like to thank you for being here again and appreciate this program. I like that it's self-referral and it's voluntary, and you're helping a very vulnerable population stabilize and have a second chance at a new life. So, yes, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, President Udele. I didn't realize this is a non-emergency ordinance, and so I was going to make my comments at the vote, but you won't be here next week. So thank you for the work that you do. It's really important work on both parts, and it's good to hear that that relationship continues to be strong. I know Commissioner Fish and I are really proud of having funded this program throughout the recession, and it's good to know that it continues and you're continuing to make improvements to it, and so thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Carla, is there any testimony?
We have 1 person signed up, Maggie.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes, and please keep your testimony relevant to the item.
Comment to make. So I noticed that there's not any women coming
State your
up
name for
here.
the
Oh,
record.
sorry, I'm Maggie. I noticed there's not any other clients coming up here, and that's understandable. And I just want to thank them for existing. That's it.
Thank you. All right, this is the first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Carla, please read item 358.
No, 359.
Oh, Did we, sorry,
We did 358.
I thought we did 357.
We did two. Did both.
Okay. It's moving right along. And here I had some closing remarks that I failed to deliver. Carla, please read the next item, whatever that may be.
359, authorize a temporary interfund loan not to exceed $2.6 million from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability Solid Waste Fund to the Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund to provide interim financing for startup cost of the Clean Energy Community Benefits Program.
Thank you. Colleagues, this is a second reading. Last week, this ordinance was first read and received public testimony. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Fish?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye. Thank you. The ordinance is adopted. Carla, please read item 360.
Amend underground wiring districts code to permit the attachment of wireless facilities on poles.
Colleagues, some last-minute issues have been brought to our attention, and we're pulling this item back to my office for further discussion before bringing it back to council. Do I need to take any further action? All right, Carla, please read the next item.
Item 361, create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the Northeast 97th Avenue Phase 2 Local Improvement District.
Colleagues, this is also a second reading. Last week, this ordinance was first read and received public testimony. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Fish?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye. Thank you. The ordinance is adopted. Carla, please read item 362.
Authorize a contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for the construction of the Dam 1 needle valve replacement project at an estimated cost of $2 million.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, President Udaley. And Teresa Elliott, the Chief Engineer, is here to explain why a needle would cost $2 million.
It's more than a needle. I'm Teresa Elliott, Chief Engineer, Portland Water Bureau. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here to ask for your authorization to solicit bids and authorize payment for the construction of the Dam 1 needle valve project. These are Lerner-Johnson valves that were installed on the dam in 1929 and allow the Water Bureau to release colder water down into the downstream. This allows us to take water out of the lower portions of the reservoir, and then this cold water releases go into the stream to make it a more habitable environment for the Chinook and coho salmon that live downstream of our reservoirs. We're replacing these valves because they've exceeded their useful life. They don't open and close as effectively as they used to, and they pose some safety risks for us operating them. The new valves will include some electronic actuators so that we can operate them remotely or manually on site if we have to. We will be advertising using the city's formal low bid process starting this summer, and construction's expected to start this fall. This contract, though, only includes the construction. We actually bought the valves themselves under a separate contract because they have a 40-week long lead time, procurement time to actually fabricate the valves. And we have a bunch of in-stream restrictions of why we can be there when we can. So the project has, we do include the city, we will be including the city's MWESV participation requirements, which I believe for construction contracts is still 20%. Because this is in the Bull Run watershed and has limited access, our only public involvement is through the quarterly Water Bureau resource protection reports that we put out to a lot of agencies. Excuse me. And then we have been working with both the Forest Service and SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, to make sure that we're minimizing the impacts on the historic dam itself. And specifically your question about why does this cost $2 million first of all, there's 3 valves that are being taken out. And those valves, we said that we have a moderate level of confidence because first off, you're taking an old valve that we're replacing it, but as you take off something to do maintenance on it or to do replacement on it, sometimes you discover that there's other things that need to be taken care of at the same time. So we have a high contingency on it. We have a moderate level of confidence because we're finding that things that are bid in the watershed tend to cost us a little bit more than things down in Portland. And then because we have a lot of time restrictions for in-stream work and a lot of restrictions from the Historic Preservation Group, we just thought that we are more comfortable saying it's a moderate level of confidence rather than saying it's an optimal level. And I'd rather be correct on my numbers rather than overestimate it and then come back to you and have to explain why I blew the budget. So I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
Any questions? No? Carla, is there any testimony?
Yes, we have one person, Maggie.
Thank you for your work, Teresa. Thank you,
Okay,
Maggie.
she is going to pass. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. And that's all for this morning's council agenda. Council is adjourned.
Nice going.